Hello everyone and welcome back to The Winning Agenda. My name is Jesse Muirman-Marshall and I'm here with a bit of a different video today. I've done a couple of videos on the channel about the Sorcery TCG, and what I wanted to do today was talk through their September update. For those of you who haven't been following the game, it was kickstarted early in the year, around May, June. It was originally slated to ship in September, and then that was pushed to November, and now because of a range of reasons, which I'm going to talk about, it's been pushed back to January, February delivery next year. Now, this has caused a little bit of consternation amongst people who backed the Kickstarter, understandably. Any delays can be a bad thing for people who've paid for something and expect for it to be delivered. But there's been a sort of an increased level of anxiety, I think, in the TCG community because of what has been a bit of a rocky period where a couple of Kickstarter games that raised significant amounts of money from backers ended up folding, one not shipping at all, and basically just the backers' money has disappeared, and another one there's going to be limited shipping, and it seems as though even if people get their product, the game's probably not going to have much of a future because the owner doesn't seem to have managed the money in such a way that there are enough funds to continue the game. Now, both of those games, which I've got sort of at the bottom of the screen there, Maelstrom and Polywog, the reason I've got the little symbols over them is to kind of indicate that Sorcery, I don't think, is anything like these. So what I'm going to do in this video is talk through the differences between the story of these games and the story of Sorcery, the reasons why Sorcery is delayed, and why it's different to what's gone on in these other games, and then also talk a little bit about the actual content of the update in September for the Sorcery TCG, what I'm excited about, what's going to be changing in terms of the development of the game and the playtesting that I've been involved in recently, and why I'm pretty excited about what's actually coming in the future. So without further ado, let's get going. So the first thing to talk about, I guess, is what was the September update for Sorcery. And what I've got on the screen here is one aspect of that update, and that is, I guess, a production schedule of where everything is at. All the different aspects of the game. So we've got the collector and avatar artwork, which were part of the Kickstarter pledges at the higher levels. Some of those have been shipped, and some others, particularly as I understand it with the United States backers, are still being shipped because there were some issues with customs around artwork. But those are well and truly on their way. In terms of the actual card game itself, we've got the sample packs, which are being sent out to the fulfillment centers now because they were already printed a while ago. We've got the binder, which is one of the products that people could buy through the Kickstarter. We've got a sample, which I'll show in a moment, that was shown in the September update, and those are about to go into production. We've got the playmats, which are also about to go into production. And then there's the precons and the booster boxes. So the precons, just like the cards in the main set, obviously they will be populated by a selection of cards from the main set, have been undergoing testing and playtesting and revision as part of the recent round of playtesting that I've been involved in. So as I understand it, the team is planning to use, they've got 10 weeks, as you can see at the bottom there, of production and printing time booked in at their printer. And they're planning to use the first chunk of that to print the precons, which means they want to get the precons finalized in the next couple of weeks. Then we've got the booster boxes, which will come after that, which with the rest of the cards in the main set. And then, of course, the foils, which are going to be part of that production run for the booster boxes, where they're still undergoing some templating and masking review in terms of how every single card has a manual mask in terms of which parts of it are going to be foil and which parts aren't, and they're just going through a final review of that. So that's kind of where everything's at. But the justification and the reason behind the delays was that the playtesting has actually delivered a whole lot of data and a whole lot of things about the game and the templating of the cards and the balance of the cards that meant that they weren't ready to just send off the set to the printer right now. And pretty much if they wanted to meet the original November deadline, they would have had to have started printing the cards already before today is the 1st of October. Now, they're planning, I think, to have the precons ready to go to the printer in the next couple of weeks, and then the remainder of the main set soon after that. So really, it's a sort of 2 to 4 week delay, perhaps, on where they would have needed to be to deliver on the November timeline. And what they've done is take some more time to finalize the set, to make sure that the feedback from the playtesters was taken into account and that the set is as good as it can be. And I don't mean that in sort of a perfectionist sense. I just mean that when you take something out to the scale that they have with 300 playtesters looking over these cards and lots of games going on, you are going to get some really interesting and informative data points that you didn't get from just your in-house playtesting. And if you get people to do that work for you, and then you don't actually flow that through into the design of the cards, then it's pretty much a wasted opportunity. So there have been, little 2-card combos and things that the community has uncovered that are just far too strong and are overpowered and pretty much make the game unfun when they're in play. And just addressing and tweaking those little things makes the game and the set just so much better overall. And I would much rather that these guys took this extra few weeks to tweak and slightly alter the cards in this first set, just to make it that little bit more fun. Because as you would have seen from the gameplay video that I put out, and I've played lots and lots of other games as part of the playtesting process besides that, it is really fun. It's really engaging, and I think it's going to be a blast to play in person. But with some of the 2-card combos and some of the things that are in the game right now, it's not as good as it could be. So anyway, what I've got on screen here is something that the team has decided to do to apologize, I guess, to people for this delay. They're putting an extra 3 booster packs per booster box, and they're putting an extra booster pack in the starter deck set that they're sending out, which I think is a nice little token for backers. They also showed us this picture. Apparently, the person who was showcasing this binder had particularly tiny hands, so it's not actually as small as it looks. Not actually as large as it looks, but it looks like, a nice binder, which people have bought through the Kickstarter. And then they showed off some photos of the production prints for the foils, where you can see that they've changed the foil masking on the left-hand side there. The original foil masking that they did had the white spaces where the foil shines through and the dark spaces where it doesn't, where it's opaque. You see the before there, it's a lot more foil and a lot less opaque, and the after is a new version of that same card, River of Flame, with a lot more opacity on it, so that, as you can see on the right-hand side, there are significantly more portions of these cards that are going to have that opaque, cloudy look, and less where the foil is actually shining through. And I think that's going to improve the foils, and the most recent examples that they've put out to us of the updated foils with this new opacity, I think look fantastic. So very excited about that. The last thing that they showed us was the boxes of the paper in a storage facility, and it's 305 GSM Japanese black core, and people kind of, I guess, happy about that, and it's obviously good to see some photos of the paper. So I showed all of these updates from the September update just to give you a bit of context about what was announced, why the slight delay is occurring, and what it means for players, as well as, I guess, some photos that they've shown us of the steps that they're taking and the prototypes that they've got to show that everything is actually still progressing. So, as I mentioned at the start, this is another example. This is actually Eric, who's the creator of the game, filling out one of the pledges that they made as part of the Kickstarter process, which was that he would hand sign one of these cards for every single backer. And here's a photo of him signing those cards while he's watching a playtest game, which actually is one of my games that I was playing. So there you go. So some of the community reaction on the Kickstarter page and on other content creators and just Reddit and other different places, and on the Discord itself, the Sorcery Discord, has been a little bit negative. So a lot of it's been positive. A lot of people saying, look, take extra time to get the game right. We don't mind a few extra weeks, which, because we're getting towards holiday season and December shipping rather than November shipping, it means that things just aren't going to be delivered in the same amount of time in terms of shipping. So they've said, January, February for actual delivery time now, even though it might only be a 4 to 6 week delay in the production. And you can see from these comments here, some people are saying they're concerned about production in China. They think there's going to be counterfeiting and, high likelihood of that occurring. It's too hard to sue manufacturers who steal your IP in China. You're damaging your quality and your brand. It's unpredictable, likely to be low quality, and it can't be highly collectible. So a lot of the backlash and the negativity that has come out has focused on this announcement, or the confirmation, because it was already actually announced, that the printer that they're using is in China. And the Sorcery team explained this by saying that, yes, there are a range of printers, including, Cardamundi in Belgium and Japan and the US, who print other large collectible card games. But that if they wanted to get this alpha set printed using that company, they would have to wait approximately 2 years for the printer time that they needed. So, look, that makes sense to me. I understand some people's reservations. There are obviously issues with IP when things are printed and made in China, but there are steps that people can take, and not every Chinese company and every person in China is out to steal intellectual property and is going to do that. So I think the reaction is overblown. I think that the Sorcery team has said that they have partnered with this company over a period of time now. They've received all these prototypes, they've had all the existing foils, all the existing sample cards printed using this printer. They're confident in the quality of the products that they've received so far, and they're going to be involved with the company during the production process for the main print run for the alpha set to make sure that it meets the same standards as what they've been getting through the sample and prototype phase. So look, that's enough for me. Like, I think that's they have clearly taken a range of steps, taken this very seriously. They've put a lot of money into the artworks that they've had created, the original artworks, many of which have now been shipped out to Kickstarter backers, to deliver on their vision of all being hand-painted, all high-quality art. I think the game looks fantastic. I think they've then put a heap of work into all the individual card foil masking, all the prototyping, all the quality control. And I think, yes, it's possible that that will all fall apart at the last moment, and that, you know, the actual product that's printed and delivered won't be as good as what it was during the prototype phase. That's a possibility, but I don't think it's likely. And so whilst I understand people being concerned or worried or having negative connotations and associations when things are printed in a factory in China that they don't know the name of and they don't know the company of, compared to a printing company like Cardamundi whose name and reputation they know, I understand that anxiety. I think that the Sorcery team has gone above and beyond to demonstrate that they have taken steps to mitigate those concerns and those risks, and I have faith that they're going to deliver a good product. But what I want to talk about today is not just this reaction, and I'll just show one other comment and the Sorcery team members' reaction to that comment first. But what I also want to touch on is the context in which this anxiety from the community is happening. And then talk about, as I said, why I think Sorcery is different, and why some of this anxiety about delays and things being made in China actually reflects people's anxieties about other projects which aren't actually related at all to Sorcery. But first, this other comment, which I think says, I have a feeling the Sorcery team is not reading these comments, put that aside. For what it's worth, I still have complete faith in the Sorcery team and their product. I'm sure Eric has put a lot of thought and done his research before making major decisions. And what I liked about the way Simon from the Sorcery team responded to this is that he did respond, first of all, to someone saying, I don't think the Sorcery team reads these Kickstarter comments, but he also did it, as he always does, in a very polite and collaborative way. So he says, we read every question and comment both here and on Discord, on videos from content creators and direct messages, so we hear the community. We're going to communicate from the living roadmap document and weekly Kickstarter updates as an effective medium to tackle as many questions as possible. Now that's, just pause there for a second, that's one of the things that they did acknowledge in the September update, is that their communication and updates, particularly outside of Discord, have not been as good as they could be. And, for anyone, whether you're in the trading card community or whether you're creating or doing another project or any creative endeavor where you're asking people to come along with you and support you and back you financially, importantly, transparency, accountability, and communication are very, very important to make sure people don't get anxious, because uncertainty breeds anxiety. That's just human nature. And if you allow space because you're not filling the space with the truth, then negativity, lies, innuendo, assumptions will fill that space. And not everybody is going to get upset and angry, but there is more space for that to occur if you're not putting out the truth and your own message and communicating very clearly with the people who are emotionally and financially invested in what you're doing. So Simon says, with our transparency measures, we are totally on record as to the decisions we have already made. I see sentiment from people on the location of printing, and in the previous video, we did discuss the nature and length of that relationship, and we feel good about where we are. We also see anecdotes about other projects and situations, and we can't be measured against the failure of others, just our own successes. So that's a nod to those other Kickstarters, which I'll talk about in a moment. Card quality and our material sourcing means that we know what we are expecting with cards. We know the printer type and all the infrastructure that supports the production process. We want to interact where it is meaningful. However, explaining production processes individually to people in messages doesn't scale, so we elect to take a more comprehensive approach to sharing information more regularly. So that makes sense. It'll be good to see some more of those updates, those comprehensive updates for the Kickstarter community particularly, rather than just through the Discord. But I think the way Simon addressed that is very effective and clear. So what I wanted to then talk about is these other two TCGs. So we had Maelstrom, well, not TCGs, just Kickstarters, because there's no cards. Maelstrom, which raised $508,675 from 810 backers. And really sadly for all those people who contributed that money and paid it through Kickstarter, that money was paid to the Maelstrom company once the Kickstarter ended. Unfortunately, the owner, lead developer of this company and this game has absconded with the money. And the announcement that was made on the Maelstrom Discord was originally, to the Maelstrom family, it is with a heavy heart, a tortured mind, and ultimate grief that we must bring you all this news. All this information will be relayed to the best of our abilities, as Devon, who's the owner and founder, has requested. Our beloved leader and the creator of Maelstrom TCG is at this time presumed deceased. They went on with a rather long message to say a range of things, basically blaming the community for initiating chargebacks and saying that the reason the project wasn't able to be completed in terms of making a final payment to the printer in China was that the Kickstarter community started instigating chargebacks, and so the account of the company was locked as those chargebacks started flowing through. Now, all of that aside, you can believe whatever you want, believe this, believe that, say that, perhaps this is all true, perhaps none of it's true and the owner always intended to run away with the money. Perhaps the owner is actually deceased. Who knows? But the end product is that there is no product and none of the people who backed the Kickstarter have got anything out of it. And there's $500,000 or thereabouts, US dollars, which has gone missing. Some people have received their chargebacks, if you believe what you read on the Discord, and some people haven't. So that's really sad and it's really unfortunate. And I guess it's hanging in the background because this was another Kickstarter TCG. It did raise $500,000, which is not a small amount of money, and nothing has been delivered to people, 800 or so people who feel, obviously quite upset about their money being taken from them. This is just an announcement that was on the Maelstrom TCG website, not their Discord, which I think also shows what's the best way to put this? The level on which this creator was operating. There were these kind of red flags and warning signs that not everything was perhaps smooth sailing for this company, that this person had made an attempt to kickstart a TCG before, it was unsuccessful. He'd rebranded, he'd had some relationships fall through, which I haven't gone into and haven't mentioned here, with other creators who were part of that original project. And then there was some legal disputes and art assets had to be redone and this, that, and the other. So there was already this background of a bit of controversy and a bit of negativity, which happened even before the Kickstarter began. We then had Pollywog, which was another Kickstarter game that had 576 backers, and it raised $165,920 US dollars out of, as you can see there, a $12,000 goal. So it's another pretty small boutique TCG. Somebody had an idea, they mocked it up. They've got all their great, art assets, world building, all this other work that they've put into it, and they've decided to try and make it a reality. Yeah, that's a good thing. Good on them. Unfortunately, what happened though is that Kevin Madden, who's the creator, who to his credit has actually restarted and reopened the Discord last week, and seems to be attempting to try and deliver something to the people who paid him all of that money. How much was it again for Pollywog? It was $165,000. So this guy's got $165,000 of his backers' money. And you can see here he's saying, in July this year, the first batch of Kickstarter booster boxes has finally finished printing and should ship from the distributor soon. I'll be sending emails to the backers receiving boxes in the first wave over the weekend. I'm also still, so this is the bit that's a massive red flag and a big issue. It says, I'm also still offering partnerships as partial owners of the Pollywog company at $1,500 per 1%. Members will be receiving extremely limited cards printed once per quarter and only printed at one per member, as well as receiving profit sharing. If you are interested in becoming a larger part of Pollywog or just want to have access to special cards that will not be released to the public, please contact me. So this is after the Kickstarter's concluded, after this person's already taken $165,000 or thereabouts of backers' money. he's offering people the opportunity to pay him more money to buy into his company. And he hasn't yet delivered the first wave of Kickstarter boxes that people have already paid for. So this, to me and to a lot of other people, was a massive red flag that something perhaps wasn't financially right. Because if we take a step back and look at what the Kickstarter game model is, particularly for a TCG, you're pledging to people, firstly, that you'll deliver them a product for the money that they're paying you through the Kickstarter, but you're also essentially pledging that you will capitalize your game and your company enough that you can pay to produce another set. A collectible card game is only worth something as long as it's still playable and still producing new cards and still exists and still has a scene, if you like. So you're essentially pledging that you will put aside enough of the initial funds that you raise, or enough of your own funds that you put into the company, that you'll then be able to print another set that you'll be able to sell to local game stores or through your website or whatever else to continue raising capital to fund your ongoing ventures and to fund your ongoing work and the future of your game. And if you don't have enough capital to even deliver the first Kickstarter boxes, let alone produce the next set and continue the life of your game, then that is like a massive red flag and a warning sign that something is wrong. And that's what seems to have happened with Pollywog. There seems to just have been, whether it's bad luck, mismanagement, funds gone missing, who knows. But something is mismatched in terms of the budget and the expectations versus the reality and what's been delivered. And it seems that the creator is now trying to raise more capital from backers before even delivering the first product. This was then another update in September. It said, "Hello everyone, as we've discussed many times now, funding has fallen short to finish production, and I have been trying to source the funds needed to print the Kickstarter products. I have for you today an idea that I believe many of you will like, but at the same time I understand the skepticism and that not everyone will agree on this. Please check out the new boxes below and visit the link to let me know what you think." So this was basically an update a couple of days ago where the creator offered to basically raise new capital by promising more boxes, special different boxes of just art cards to people to basically raise the capital he needs to finish the printing of the original Kickstarter boxes. So long story short, this looks like a disaster. It looks like even if people do receive their cards, it's not a game that's going to be long for this world. It doesn't seem to have a future. And it seems that even if some backers or even all backers on Kickstarter get their cards, it's going to be difficult for this person to continue running a company and producing future sets. So in the context of Maelstrom and Polywog, I can understand why people, when Sorcery said there's going to be a delay, when Sorcery made the clear announcement that the print is in China and has always been in China for all the sample cards, that people started conflating what's happened with Polywog, what's happened with Maelstrom, and thinking that's going to happen with Sorcery. But what I've shown you in contrast here, I hope, between the communication from the Sorcery team about the slight delays and the roadmap and everything else that they've already got in place, compared with these announcements from Maelstrom and Polywog, it's chalk and cheese, really. They're operating in completely different levels, and I have full faith and confidence that Sorcery is going to deliver. So you can see here, contrast what we just saw from Maelstrom and Polywog with this update from the September update from the Sorcery team. So in the middle of the update, it began obviously by announcing that there was going to be somewhat of a delay and that this was the update. So what transpired in the playtesting process was we received an unprecedented number of applications for playtesting with over 300 signups and thousands of points of data. So that's all the games that people have played through this playtesting process over the last month. With a resource this valuable, we are obliged to study the data and factor that insight back into the game design. We are delighted not only to capture that sheer volume of data, but it also helps us understand sentiment and observe how players play Sorcery using Tabletop Simulator. We see the fun you're having. This additional testing has impacted our production schedule and pushed our fulfillment projections to year end and beyond, when we encounter a lot more unpredictability with logistics services around Christmas for shipping. It becomes challenging to predict when the product will land, be offloaded, and will arrive at distribution centres. This issue is compounded by planning how products are packed and shipped to backers when faced with seasonal staffing issues. This means we predict a delay from our previously stated November timeline, pushing into early next year. The testing put our plans back by approximately 5 weeks into this harder to predict window. So to me, again, you compare that with what's come out of Pollywog, with the owner asking for more money before he's even delivered the first set. with Maelstrom, where the owner's apparently deceased, and the account is apparently locked because of the volume of Kickstarter chargebacks. So you compare those announcements where things have gone wrong with this Sorcery announcement where they're saying, look, we've had so many people engaged with the playtesting process that we've decided to make some last-minute revisions to the set before we hit print. It's going to push us back into the Christmas shipping window, so shipping is probably not likely to be delivered to you for another couple of months. It's a completely different story. It's nothing like Pollywog or Maelstrom, and I have it makes sense to me. I agree with the rationale, and I have every confidence that it'll be delivered. So, this is an example from the developer roundtable that they then had, a subsequent video after the September update where we had Simon, who's the community manager, and Eric, who's the creator, talking about, those things that I just discussed about the delays and the playtesting. We then had Simon, Mike, Ira, and Rafa, who are 4 of the staff members at Eric's Curiosa Games, who create the company that's creating the game. And Mike, Rafa, and Ira are the developers and the playtesters actually working on the game side of it. And they gave a range of insights about the changes that they are making based on the playtesting feedback. And again, this is a professional company. This is a company that's actually taking the Kickstarter money they've raised, investing it in wages for people who are board gaming and card gaming professionals who are playtesting and refining this game to make it good and work on future sets, which have already been announced for a game that they're hoping is going to have a life into the future. So Sorcery is completely different. It's not Maelstrom, it's not Polywog, and I think this update was just fantastic, this developer roundtable. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, I'll link it in the video description below and you can head along and watch it. And a couple of quick update examples. They showed how they've changed Quick Magic, which was essentially instants if you play other games, and they've now created it a more narrow window and the ability to play Quick Magic only when an ally is attacked rather than playing Quick Magic at instant speed anytime. So there's just little examples of things that they showed in the developer roundtable as to the slight revisions they're making to the game. They gave rationales for why they're doing it, and they explained how they think it's going to deliver a better play experience for people who play Sorcery. And it completely aligns with my experience from playtesting as well. Some other examples, Summoning Sphere, which was an extremely powerful, cost-reducing, basically space restriction ignoring card. For 1 resource, you got this aura, so it stays in play like an enchantment in Magic, and it lets you play any creatures or minions in Sorcery for 1 resource less. So you're getting a 1 resource discount on all your minions that you play, and you can summon them at the location that the Summoning Sphere is placed, which could be on your opponent's side of the board, basically. So it was an extremely powerful card, and they've toned it down by getting rid of the cost reduction and giving you only the ability to play on your opponent's side of the board, which is still powerful, but not nearly as broken. Summoning Sphere was basically like the engine I used in all the broken combo decks that I brewed up during the playtesting process, so I'm glad that they've changed that. And then Browse and Dispel a couple of other cards. But the reason I put this in here is that I think it shows that when they gave us this update and they're saying, look, we've taken the data from the playtesting, we've listened to the playtesters, and we're just making some last minute tweaks, they then actually showed us what they meant. And what they meant was really sensible changes that flow through the key feedback. Like all 3 of these cards I gave feedback on, and the results align pretty much with what I and many others were suggesting. So I think they're doing a great job. And I think the game is going to be a lot better for having these small tweaks and changes made. The other thing that they're doing is they're going through the rulebook, which is great. And this doesn't necessarily impact on the production because rulebook is going to be online. There might be some kind of starter rulebook in the starter decks, I don't know. But the fact that they're putting this much work into really defining and mapping out mentally and visually how the game flows, how it functions, how the players understand it and interpret it, means that the wording, the design of the cards, and the final development tweaks that they make on the cards can align to all of this so much better. And I just think the amount of work they're putting into this was something that Mike, who I showed that video 4 square before of the 4 people from the Sorcery team who gave that update. Mike is the rules manager who's doing all these updates on the rulebook, who's recently joined the team. And I think all of this work that Mike's doing is just really fantastic, and it's feeding into the clarity that we're getting, the increased clarity in the cards themselves. So the road ahead. Simon, the community manager, has undertaken to deliver a living roadmap which is going to be updated constantly and give us, as the Kickstarter backer community, some clarity about all the different milestones that the game is going through as it heads towards production, shipping, delivery. That's great. I can't wait to see it. I think the team needs to get it out as soon as possible. And that leads into the second point, which is I think the Sorcery team has now recognized some communication issues, some things that weren't going so well, things outside of their control, like Maelstrom, Polywog, all these other TCGs, are realities, right? Like there are people who have probably backed all three of these projects who have seen two of the projects go terribly. And although Sorcery is completely different for all the reasons I've mentioned, I think it's incumbent on the Sorcery team to acknowledge that there are people who've been really hurt by that. And to the extent that they can do a little bit more to help their community feel a bit calmer and reduce some of that anxiety, I think they should do that. And that means things like delivering the living roadmap as soon as possible and meeting the commitments that they make to the community. So they've said, we're going to do weekly Kickstarter updates. I think they need to do those weekly Kickstarter updates. You know, they need to stick to that. It might seem like, our community will want us to invest as much time as possible in actually getting the game done, and that's the most important thing. And if the communication slips a little bit, you know, they'll forgive us because at the end of the day, we're actually delivering what they want, which is the game. But I think it's very important not to fall into that mindset and to actually really stick to those communication commitments and remember that reducing anxiety by giving people the truth and giving people updates, whatever the truth is going to make the anxiety levels come down so much more than if there's silence and that gets filled with people's anxious thoughts. So hit print after this round of playtesting is the last suggestion that I have. I think the decision to pause for a few weeks to filter through some of the feedback from the round of playtesting with 300 playtesters was great, but I think it's not necessary to delay further. I think we're now getting to a point where we've identified the really bad cards, the really terrible 2-card combos. The team's got enough data, enough information to put out an alpha set that works well enough. And if there need to be further tweaks, bans, revisions for the beta set, revisions for the next set, so be it. But I think we need to sort of get moving after this round of revisions is my thought. So there's also some really exciting things ahead. There's a celebration tournament that they're planning on TTS, Tabletop Simulator, to reward people who've been involved and anyone who wants to jump on. You know, download TTS, download the Sorcery mod, jump onto the Discord and get involved. It's going to be great. It'll be a blast, and I'm looking forward to it. The product arriving, it's going to be fun. This is a super fun game. I have loved playtesting, and I just can't wait to get my hands on the cards. And a bit of game experience. That's what we've ultimately got. There's been a lot of consternation, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry that's come out of this September update and this slight delay, but what it's actually going to mean is really good, and that is a better game. And I can categorically say, if we had gotten shipped to us in September or November, the game as it was that we've been playtesting it with, it would be a lot worse than the game we're going to end up with, which is going to have all these problematic combos revised slightly. It's going to have a much healthier and more fun gameplay experience without the feel-bad moments. And I'm super excited about that. So thanks for coming along on this little ride. I'll look forward to, I'll keep you updated if there's anything big on the Sorcery front. I'll probably do a couple of box openings when I get the cards because I really love the game and I can't wait to get my hands on it. I might do a couple of other playtesting or videos from the Celebration tournament. We've also got some fun fab content coming up soon with our preview card from the new Dynasty set, which is releasing in November. So do stay tuned into the Winning Agenda. Don't forget to subscribe, become a member if you enjoy the content we're putting out, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks for watching.